Hello again, friends. How are you doing? Hope things are good. When we last left off in the last video, I was putting pedals in order on this pedal board and showing you a little bit about why I'm putting pedals in a certain order. And then I realized at that time that uh, my collection of various patch cables were basically all the wrong size. I could use a couple of these in various spots, but for the larger runs, I needed, something different. So I've been making patch cables, and I wanted to kind of show you that process because I think it's a good process to learn. I think that everybody should figure out how to do it, at least at a rudimentary level, so that, when you buy patch cables, these things aren't cheap. Even these are GLS audio. These are like 6 footers that you get for 14 bucks on Amazon or something. It's still not cheap, but they're easy to repair. You can unscrew this and you can fix this if you know what you're doing. So these patch cables, I made all of them, even this little teeny tiny guy, from readily available parts. In fact, I'm using the cheapest 1/4 inch pancake connectors you can buy. They're not very thin. You look at these MXR connectors, they are pretty thin, like a 6 mil. This is a good size. These are significantly bigger in that, in between size, and they're also like much larger this way. Like, so they kind of get in the way sometimes, especially like where I have this mono channel. Like I put these two delays that are inside this pedal in series instead of parallel. So these are kind of in the way, but that's okay. That's fine. The good news is you can make these any length you want. You get some stock cable. You get some connectors. You make a cable. So I need a cable now. The baseball's filter, this filter, is going to go somewhere around here. I want there to be enough space between the filter and the Super Ego that I can plug in these two cables without interference. These will be the cables that go to my volume pedal. So right about there seems to be a good place for these. I can plug them in, unplug them. So if I want my volume pedal between these two, plug those in. If I want my volume pedal before the Super Ego, plug a jumper in. We're good. So I have a spare jumper. I can jump this, and I'm good. And so also, thinking about that, I should be able to, easily plug a jumper cable in. Not a problem. So this is a good spot for this guy. So what we need to do now is we need to start making this cable. And I'm going to try to get you a little closer. So I'll be right back. Okay. Things that are absolutely necessary for this procedure. A soldering iron, however you want to say it. I am using a very expensive Weller. This is great for doing electronics work. A little bit overkill for this process, but you can totally do this with a $10 soldering iron from Amazon, or even your local automotive store has this stuff. You obviously need cable, and you need ends. Whether you're using these pancake style or you're using the 90-degree style, that's up to you. These are slightly different in the way that you make them, but you'll be able to figure that out. You'll need a knife, and you'll need solder. Those are the necessities. The rest of the stuff you see here are things that make life a little easier for me. Because I use an electronic soldering iron and I'm using this is non-rosin core solder. This is just solder. I also use flux paste. If you buy rosin core solder, it has the flux in it. You don't need the paste. Might need a screwdriver. That would be helpful to open these up. The point is, you know, I have a bunch of tools here that probably cost more than a handful of cables. You don't need this stuff. For, you know, $40 or something, you can get the tools that you need to do this. I'm going to use helping hands to hold these. You could use a piece of wood with a hole drilled in it. You can use, I've seen people use like pedals themselves. Just put this in the pedal, stand the pedal up, and you have a little support. First thing you're going to have to do is get one end of your cable ready. And it doesn't take a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of distance between the strain relief, so the little notches that are in this are strain relief, and this inside piece. So if you lay it in here, you can get a kind of an idea about how much you need to strip off, and it comes down to about maybe a ½ inch. You can buy fancy strippers for this. I don't use fancy strippers for this. I just use a razor blade. Score this. You don't have to cut all the way down into your cutting into the copper wires. You just have to score it, and then if you twist it, it comes right off. This is GLS branded wire, so there is no extra shielding in here. What you'll have to do is just pull apart this copper outer wire. This is your negative wire. Get all those strands out, and then twist them up real tight. Real tight. And then this guy, you will want to probably use wire strippers, but again, you don't need these. You can do it with a razor blade. You can do it with side cuts if you're really careful and you just score the plastic. You can pull it apart like that pretty easily. I'm going to take off just a tiny bit more. I have found with these connectors that this lower one is a little shorter, so I don't need as much length, so I like to trim this off just a little bit like that. And now this is ready to go. Actually, it's not ready to go in here. This is generic cable. It's a little bit smaller, so it doesn't fit the strain relief as easily. So what I like to do in that case is get a piece of shrink tube, cut it down, put it over our cable, and push it out of the way. You could do this like before starting the other end or something. You don't have to do this at this exact moment in time, but for demonstration purposes, that works. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our wires and we're going to do what's called tinning. And that just means we're going to put a little bit of solder on the wire. And when you're doing this, you're not putting the solder on the soldering iron. You're putting the soldering iron on the wire, letting the wire heat up, and then touching the wire with the solder and letting it flow. And you just need to get a little bit on there. You don't need to put like a massive glob of solder. I know I just said that you don't put the solder on the wire, but if you put, you don't put the solder on the soldering iron, but if you put a little bit on there, it helps transfer the heat faster. So you can basically disregard what I said earlier. Okay, next step, we have the tin on our wires. You can tin these terminals if you want. I don't find a need to do that. I'm going to poke that wire down through that top hole, being very, very careful. This is an important topic of conversation. Being very careful that this positive wire, this is your center pin wire, does not go through that hole and touch this jacket in any way, shape, or form. Your number one priority right now is to keep that wire away from the jacket. If this bottom wire touches, not a big deal. That is a ground, and you need to touch ground anyway. I like to use one of these little clips to hold this. It just makes life a little bit easier. And I put it together. I'm going to take my soldering paste or my flux and put just a tiny bit of flux on these. Again, this is just because I'm using electronic solder that doesn't have rosin in it. If you buy rosin core solder, you'll be just fine. You don't need to do what I'm doing right there. Now we just put a little bit of heat. A little bit of heat. Touch the solder. Let it all flow together. And we're done. That's simple. You now have one end of this cable solidly connected, not going anywhere. What I'll do now is I will push this little sleeve up till it's about there. Behind here, I can't show you this part. I don't have a long enough extension cord. I've got a heat gun. You can do this with a lighter, a stove, a candle, kind of, a match, any heat source. We'll just shrink that tubing up, close it up a little bit. We're going to put our little shield down. I tuck it in the end there so it's out of the way. And then we're going to put our cap on. Put the screws back in. I have found with these cheaper connectors, sometimes these screws are not they're not firm. They're not grabbing the threads firmly, and so maybe a dab of Loctite or even super glue will work to help keep the threads, keep the screw in the threads. Don't be afraid of the super glue trick. You can absolutely do it, because if this ever gets pulled apart or you need to fix it, you can just heat up the super glue and it'll come right apart. And at that point, you've already damaged the thing. So heating up the super glue, heating up the thing is not a concern. Like, yeah, you'll probably loosen the solder or melt the wire or whatever, but who cares? You're fixing it. Done. That end is done. So now, what we need to do, I'm going to plug this in. This is going in the TC Electronic Thunderstorm flanger. Keep in mind that none of these pedals are like the pedals for this board. Besides the Super Ego, the Byte, the Infinity 2, and the Oceans 11, these are all kind of up for debate on whether they're going to stay on this board or not. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to put it in the TC11. I'm going to route it. I'm going to bring it around this way so I don't have this jack hanging off the side of the board. I'm going to route it this way, bring it down, and we're just going to give ourselves a little extra room. Not a crazy amount, but I'm going to cut it about right there. So here you can use side cuts. You could use your knife. If all you have is a knife, you can cut this with a razor blade, no problem. And now we're going to do the same thing on this end. So I'm going to go do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, my cable is finished. And I know I just said that you don't need a lot of tools for this, but I will tell you one more thing that I don't think it's not 100% necessary. I still stand by the fact that you can do this with just a knife and soldering iron. But a tester of some kind to test your cables is very useful. There are cable testers you can buy where you plug these in and it'll tell you. I will say that those basically do not work on these short cables because it's usually on two different sides of the box or whatever. But to test a cable, it's nice to have an ohm meter because you're testing for continuity between tip and sleeve. You should have 0. There should be nothing there. So that one's 0. You should have nothing on this one. Also 0. And then you're also testing for resistance between the two ends. So these two sleeves should have basically no resistance, or they'll have some. There's always a little bit just because of the copper wire and everything else. And then these two tips, dagnabbit, why you gotta be difficult? These two tips should have essentially 0. The nice thing about using the ohm meter, the cable testers, at least the ones that I've seen, they'll tell you if you have continuity, but what they won't tell you is if there's high resistance. If maybe you got a cold solder joint or something that causes a high resistance between tips, that could cause the cable to be very noisy. The other thing you can do is just plug it in. Plug a pedal in, plug it into your amp, see if it works. If it works, it works. And you can move on with your life. I honestly, I had to take this apart last night and measure these because I've soldered enough in my life that I just trust myself. Turn this off now. I trust myself, and so I didn't feel the need to double check my work, but then I thought I should. So, finally time to finish wiring up this pedal board. Again, none of these pedals are like the end-all be-all for me. In fact, I don't even know that I want a filter on the board. A flanger, I like the sound of a flanger at times. And I'm thinking the same thing can happen with the filter, especially when I'm doing something with the synth engine or something. I could manually sweep the filter and get some fun noises. So for now, it's going to live on the board. There's other pedals that I would rather have, but we're doing this on a budget. So next is to power everything. There's no power running to anything right now. I think I told you the last time that I went with the K-Line. This is a K-Line CP205 isolated power supply. It's got 7 300 milliamp and 1 500 milliamp circuits. So it'll power 8 pedals without daisy chaining, which I think is a good thing. These power supplies are very inexpensive, and I think they work just fine. I have used the little miniature version of that guy, the CP, this guy, CP209. It's just got 4 ports on it. Works fantastic. Not a noisy thing at all. I've had some power-hungry pedals on there and have never had an issue. So, let's talk about wiring this. If this were like, so this pedal board is this is a gigging, take places and play with pedal board. So I have all the wires neatly tucked away. I have cable management holding up everything. It's all made for putting it in a case and moving it around. This guy is made for modularity and usability, and not necessarily for, like, I'm not taking this on tour or something. If I was, then all of these cables would be the exact length they would need to be. I would be using strain reliefs or cable management solutions to kind of keep these in place. Instead, what I've done is I've given myself a lot of leeway in these cables so I can move these pedals around, I can change things around, and I have cables that are useful for this scenario. The same thing's going to happen with the power. I do have, and I have used, and I like, this sort of thing. You can get these at Walmart. These are like little stick-on cable things that you can, put your cable in and it'll hold it. And they have just sticky backs, so you can put them up under the pedal board and kind of organize your cables. I like these a lot for pedal boards that are going to change. I know a lot of people use the cable management systems that are kind of zip ties that stick down, and I've seen some people go crazy with those. But for this, I'm not trying to build a traveling pedal board. I'm not trying to lock anything down permanently. This thing will be in a state of flux for its life, hopefully. For as long as I'm making weird ambient noises. This is my weird ambient noise generator. I don't foresee ever using any of this stuff in any of the bands that I play in or whatever. But who knows? Maybe I'll form a noise band and I'll find some other musicians that want to make noise with me. So for right now, what I'm getting at is I'm just going to kind of put this in. I'm just going to slap these in, and I might use some of those little sticky devices just to keep this from flopping around. I don't want the I don't want these cables just loose flopping around on the floor. Actually, this is over on this side, so we should go to this side. This is the power brick that comes with it. This is the one thing I don't like about the cheaper power supplies. I wish they all came with the like, you know, the standard C14 plugs, so that you could just, you know, I could get a cable as long as I need a cable, and then I don't have this brick somewhere. I've thought about mounting a adapter under here and keeping this plugged in under here so that I could have a C14, and then you could get whatever size whatever size cable you need to run to this. But this is not going on tour. Again, this is just for funsies at home, not looking to overcomplicate things unnecessarily. All right. There we go. I'm going to finish wiring this up. That's it for this video. Next time, we'll make some noise with it and have a talk about the various pedals and the various reasons I'm using those pedals, and hopefully you'll be able to give me some suggestions about better routing or better pedal options, or whatever. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. See you next time.